It was late afternoon when a man on a motorcycle stopped outside a small diner by the highway. The sky was cloudy, and the air was fresh after a little rain. The man wore a simple black jacket, dark jeans, and old boots. His helmet covered most of his face, and his bike was not shiny or new, but strong and quiet. He parked carefully, took off his helmet, and walked slowly inside. People inside the diner didn't notice him at first. The place was busy, with the sound of spoons clinking on plates and the soft music playing in the background. There were truck drivers, a family with noisy kids, and a group of bikers laughing near the window. The man, who was Keanu Reeves, walked to an empty table in the corner. He didn't want attention. He just wanted some coffee and a break from the long ride. The waitress saw him, smiled, and brought him a menu. She noticed his gentle eyes and the way he quietly said thank you. Keanu ordered a simple meal, black coffee, and a slice of apple pie. He looked tired but peaceful. As he waited, he watched people around him, enjoying the small things, the laughter of the children, the steam rising from coffee cups, the way the light came through the window. But not everyone was friendly. The group of bikers by the window started watching Keanu. They were loud and dressed in heavy leather jackets, their bikes parked just outside. At first, they just glanced his way. Then one of them, the one with a big beard and tattoos, nudged his friend and whispered, "Look at the loner over there." The others turned, looked at Keanu, and snickered. They didn't recognize him. To them, he was just another traveler, quiet, alone, maybe a little strange. Keanu heard their laughter but didn't react. He was used to people staring, but today, he wanted to be just another person in the crowd. He sipped his coffee slowly, tasting the warmth. He looked out the window at the cloudy sky, thinking about his journey and the stories he had heard from people all over the world. The bikers, seeing he didn't respond, grew bolder. One called out, "Hey, nice bike. Did you get it from a junkyard?" The others laughed even louder. The waitress glanced nervously at the group, worried they might cause trouble. She went to Keanu and whispered, "Are you okay? Should I call someone?" Keanu smiled kindly and shook his head. "Thank you. It's all right," he said softly. He didn't want any drama. He just wanted a quiet meal and some time to rest. He understood that sometimes people act tough in groups, showing off in front of their friends. He had seen it before, both in his real life and on movie sets. But still, the laughter stung a little. Not because it hurt his feelings, but because he wished people would treat strangers with more kindness. The bikers kept glancing his way, trying to get more reactions. But Keanu remained calm. He paid attention to the waitress, who refilled his coffee with a shy smile and thanked her politely each time. He even complimented her on the pie, saying it was the best he'd tasted all day. She blushed, happy that someone noticed her effort. Time passed slowly. The family with kids finished their food and left, waving to the waitress. The truck drivers paid their bills and returned to their rigs. The diner was getting quieter, but the bikers remained, still keeping an eye on Keanu. Every now and then, they whispered or laughed, but he didn't give them the satisfaction of reacting. Inside, Keanu remembered moments in his life when he was alone and no one recognized him. He liked these moments because they reminded him of how simple life could be. No cameras, no crowds, just ordinary people living ordinary lives, he found comfort in these simple places, in the kindness of strangers, and in the taste of warm coffee on a cold day. As the sun began to set, the golden light filled the diner, making everything look peaceful and warm. Keanu took a deep breath, feeling thankful for this quiet moment, even if some people tried to ruin it. Little did anyone know, something unexpected was about to happen, something that would leave everyone in the diner, especially the group of bikers, completely speechless. But for now, Keanu just finished his pie, smiled at the waitress, and waited for whatever would come next. The air inside the diner felt heavier now. The group of bikers sat together by the window, their laughter filling the room like a dark cloud. They were not old, maybe in their 30s, but they liked to act big and bold. Their leather jackets had colorful patches, and their boots thumped against the floor as they joked among themselves. Most people in the diner tried to ignore them, but their voices were too loud to miss. Keanu sat quietly in his corner. He kept his head down, focusing on his coffee, but he could feel their eyes on him. One of the bikers, a tall man with a scar above his eyebrow, leaned forward and said loudly, "Hey, quiet guy, you traveling alone, or did your friends leave you behind?" His friends burst out laughing, some banging their hands on the table, making the cups rattle. Keanu didn't answer. He gave a small smile, as if their words didn't bother him. Inside, he felt a mix of sadness and patience. He knew how it felt to be laughed at, but he also knew these men were probably just bored and showing off. He did not want to fight back with anger. Instead, he took another sip of his coffee and looked out the window. The waitress, who was cleaning a nearby table, glanced at Keanu. She saw how the bikers kept picking on him and wished she could do something to help. But she also knew that sometimes saying something made things worse. So she simply walked by and placed a fresh napkin on Keanu's table, hoping it might comfort him in a small way. The bikers noticed her kindness. One of them, with a deep voice, teased her. "He's not going to talk to you, you know. He's too shy." The others laughed again. The waitress pretended not to hear, but her cheeks turned a little red dot now. The man with the scar wanted to push more. He stood up, walked over to Keanu's table, and leaned on the edge. "Hey buddy," he said in a fake friendly tone. "That's a nice jacket. Looks like something from a movie set. You trying to be a movie star, or are you just lost?" His friends watched, waiting to see what Keanu would do. Keanu looked up at the man. His eyes were calm, his face relaxed. He said quietly, "I just stopped here for some coffee, that's all." His words were simple, without any anger. But, for some reason, his calm voice made the biker pause for a second. Still, he didn't want to back down in front of his friends. "Coffee, huh? Well, maybe you should get something stronger. Might help you speak up," the biker joked, trying to make his friends laugh again. They did, louder than before. Other people in the diner started to feel uncomfortable. An older couple sitting nearby exchanged worried looks. The truck driver at the counter put down his sandwich and watched closely, ready to step in if things went too far. But Keanu stayed peaceful. He did not want trouble, and he knew that reacting would only make things worse. So he smiled, thanked the biker for his advice, and took another bite of his pie. Suddenly, another biker spoke up from the group. Maybe he's just thinking about his next big adventure. Or maybe he's running from something. There was a mix of laughter and curiosity in his voice. But there was also something else, a little bit of respect. Even though they were teasing him, some of them started to wonder why this quiet man was not afraid or angry. The leader of the group, a man with short hair and a loud laugh, called out, "Hey, let's leave him alone. He's just some guy on a long ride. Not everyone needs to talk as much as us." His words calmed the group a bit, and the laughter died down. Keanu looked up and nodded to the leader, his eyes kind. "Thank you," he said simply. The leader shrugged and went back to his coffee, but now the bikers watched Keanu with different eyes. They were still curious, but some of their boldness had faded. The diner felt quieter again. The waitress smiled softly at Keanu and cleared his plate. The truck driver at the counter relaxed and went back to his sandwich. Even the bikers seemed a little less loud now, but deep inside, the group was wondering about the quiet man in the corner. Who was he? Why did he not react like other people? They didn't know that soon, one phone call would change everything and make them see him in a completely new way. The diner was still buzzing softly, but things felt calmer now. The bikers had quieted down, though they still glanced at Keanu from time to time. Some of them leaned back in their chairs, stretching their arms or looking at their phones. But the feeling in the air was still curious, like everyone was waiting for something to happen. Keanu sat at his table, finished his last bite of pie, and checked the time on his phone. He knew he would have to leave soon to reach his next stop before dark. Just then, his phone started to buzz. The screen lit up with a name that most people would not recognize, but it meant a lot to him. He picked up his phone and answered in. A quiet, gentle voice. "Hello," he said, as if he was speaking to an old friend. His words weren't loud, but the diner was so quiet that even a small sound seemed big. The bikers, already curious about this quiet stranger, perked up their ears. At first, they thought he might just be talking to a family member or a friend. But then, as Keanu listened, his replies caught their attention. "Yeah, I'll be there tomorrow morning," Keanu said softly. "The script looks good. I talked with the director last night about the fight scene. We might need to change a few things for safety." His words were simple, but they carried a weight. One of the bikers, the man with the scar, narrowed his eyes and leaned forward. Keanu listened for a moment, then added, "Tell the stunt team I'll bring my own gear. I'll check the location before we start. And please remind the crew about the early call time." He smiled, remembering some funny moment from the last shoot, and laughed quietly. "No, I haven't forgotten the helmet. I always keep it safe." The bikers looked at each other in surprise. Suddenly, their joke seemed less funny. They had just spent the last half hour teasing a man who was talking about movie scripts, directors, and stunt teams. Some of them started to realize they might have made a mistake. The leader of the group, trying to keep his cool, shrugged and whispered, "Maybe he's just making it up. Anyone can pretend to be a big shot on the phone." But even he sounded less sure now. Keanu's voice stayed calm and friendly as he finished the call. "Thank you, I'll see you all soon. And tell the team I'm looking forward to it." He hung up, put his phone down, and took another sip of coffee. By now, the whole group of bikers was staring openly at him. Even the truck driver at the counter turned to watch, his sandwich forgotten for a moment. The waitress, cleaning up another table, caught some of the conversation and gave Keanu a curious look. The biker with the scar couldn't help himself. He stood up again, walked over to Keanu's table and asked, "Hey man, what do you do? Are you really working on a movie?" His voice wasn't mocking this time. There was a hint of respect, or maybe just pure curiosity. Keanu looked up. Meeting the man's eyes, he didn't act proud or annoyed. He just nodded. "Yes, I work in movies. Sometimes I do my own stunts." He smiled a little, almost shy. "It's nothing special. I just try to do my best." The rest of the bikers were quiet now, waiting for more. The leader leaned forward and spoke up. "You sound familiar, you know that? Your voice. Have I heard you in a film?" Keanu gave a small laugh. "Maybe. I've been lucky to do some movies people know." He kept it simple, not bragging or listing his work. Suddenly, something clicked for the group. One of the younger bikers, who had been watching quietly all along, pulled out his phone and started searching for pictures. He looked up, his eyes wide, and whispered something to the others. Soon, the whole group realized the truth. Whispers spread through the diner. People began to understand who was sitting at the table in the corner, the quiet man they had teased for being different. The mood shifted from bold and loud to silent and thoughtful. Everyone was waiting to see what would happen next, and for the first time, the bikers had no more jokes to tell. Outside, the sun was setting and the sky was turning gold. Inside, something important was changing. An ordinary moment was about to become unforgettable. All because of a single phone call and a quiet man who chose kindness over anger. A strange silence filled the diner. The bikers who had been so loud just minutes ago now sat quietly, staring at the man they had teased. The one with the scar scratched his head. trying to remember where he had seen Keanu's face before. The younger biker showed a photo on his phone to the group under the table, his eyes wide with shock. A couple of the bikers nodded, finally putting all the pieces together. The leader of the group, who always spoke the loudest, stood up and walked over to Keanu's table. This time, his steps were slow, and his voice was different, not proud or joking, but careful and a bit nervous. He stopped by Keanu's table and asked, "Excuse me, are you really who we think you are?" His voice was so soft that even the waitress had to lean in to hear. Keanu looked up at the biker, giving him a gentle smile. He nodded once, not needing to say his name. Just this quiet confirmation made the biker step back a little, unsure what to do next. The whole group, even the ones who liked to show off, sat a little straighter in their seats, feeling small and awkward now. For a moment, nobody said anything. Even the people at the other tables noticed the change. The older couple who had watched the scene earlier now looked at Keanu with respect, while the truck driver nodded as if he understood everything. The waitress, who had felt sorry for Keanu, now realized he didn't need pity. He was someone who could teach everyone a lesson about patience. The leader of the bikers cleared his throat. We didn't mean anything," he said, his voice low. "We were just having fun. Sometimes we joke around too much." His face turned a little red. He looked down at the floor, not meeting Keanu's eyes. Keanu nodded, understanding. He had seen this before, people acting tough. Until the truth came out. He didn't get angry or try to embarrass them. Instead, he said softly, "It's okay, I understand." He gave a small smile to the whole group. "Everyone has bad days. We all make mistakes." The man with the scar joined the leader, feeling sorry. "We didn't know who you were," he said, almost whispering. "We just thought you were another guy passing through." His words hung in the air, heavy with regret. Some of the other bikers looked down at their hands, not sure what to do. The one with the phone put it away, ashamed of showing off. Nobody wanted to be the first to speak, and even the boldest bikers seemed nervous now. The joking and teasing felt like a distant memory. For a while, Keanu just sat there, giving them time to think. He was not angry, he was not proud. He was just calm and open, the same as before. This made the bikers even more surprised. They had expected a movie star to be different, loud, proud, maybe even rude. But Keanu was the opposite. Finally, the leader looked up again. "Sorry for the way we acted," he said, his voice honest. "We shouldn't have judged you. It wasn't right." A few others nodded in agreement, their faces serious. It was not easy for them to say sorry, but they meant every word. Keanu accepted their apology right away. "Thank you," he said. "It takes a strong person to say sorry." He could see the relief on their faces as the tension started to fade. The waitress came over, unsure if she should interrupt. She brought a fresh cup of coffee for Keanu and set it on the table. "On the house," she said, smiling, now proud to serve him. The bikers noticed her kindness and realized how much their attitude had affected the whole place. The mood in the diner began to change. People were talking quietly, some stealing glances at Keanu, others whispering to each other about the lesson they had just seen. The truck driver finished his meal, looked at Keanu, and gave him a respectful nod before heading out the door. The bikers sat back in their seats, much quieter than before. Their laughter was gone, replaced by respect and a bit of shame. But something good had happened. They were learning a lesson they would never forget, one that would change the way they treated strangers from that day forward. And Keanu, who had stayed calm and kind through it all, knew he had touched their hearts just by being himself. The moment was simple, but it was real. Sometimes, the best way to change the world is by showing patience and understanding, even when others don't. After the tension faded, the diner became quiet, but not uncomfortable. The bikers sat in their seats, thinking about what had just happened. Some looked out the window at the fading sunlight. Others looked at Keanu, still amazed at the man they had teased was someone so famous and humble. Even though they felt awkward, a feeling of respect was starting to grow in their hearts. Keanu finished his coffee and noticed the group was still unsure. He could have left things as they were, but he didn't want the moment to end in silence or shame. So he stood up and, with a friendly smile, walked over to the biker's table. The whole diner seemed to watch as he did this. He pulled out a chair and sat with the group, as if they were old friends. "Mind if I join you?" he asked. The bikers nodded, surprised but happy that he wanted to sit with them. Their leader tried to hide his nerves, but he smiled back and said, "Of course." At first, nobody knew what to say. The bikers were used to being the loudest in the room, but now they felt like school kids meeting their hero. Keanu made it easier for them. He started asking simple questions like where they were from, how long they'd been riding together, and what brought them to the diner that evening. The men began to relax. One by one, they shared little stories about their road trips, the towns they'd visited, and the funny things that had happened along the way. They talked about their bikes, the time one of them got lost in a rainstorm, and how they always ended up at the same diner because the food was good and the waitress was kind. Keanu listened closely to every story, nodding and smiling at all the right moments. He laughed with them when the stories were funny and showed real interest in their lives. The bikers were surprised by how normal he was, no attitude, no pride, just a regular guy who liked to listen and share a laugh. Soon, Keanu shared a few stories of his own. He talked about the first time he rode a motorcycle, how nervous he had been, and how he fell off the bike more than once before he learned to ride well. He told them about traveling for movies and meeting people from all over the world, and how sometimes the best moments were the simple ones, like eating pie at a small diner or talking to strangers who became friends. The bikers listened carefully, hanging on to every word. They were curious about his movies, but they were even more interested in his thoughts about life, travel, and the kindness of people he'd met along the way. They realized that even someone famous could feel alone sometimes, or could enjoy the small things just like anyone else. The conversation grew warmer. The waitress came by to refill their drinks, her eyes shining with excitement. She asked Keanu if he liked the pie, and he said it was the best he'd had in a long time. The bikers joked with her now too, making the mood light and friendly. Again, one of the bikers, who had been quiet before, finally spoke up. He apologized again for the way they had acted earlier. Keanu reached across the table, shook his hand and said, "It's all right. We all make mistakes. What matters is how we move forward." The biker looked relieved, his eyes grateful. They kept talking until the sun went down and the neon lights outside the diner glowed in the dark. Other people in the diner watched the group, surprised at how the night had changed. They saw tough bikers and a famous actor sitting together, laughing and sharing stories like old friends. By the end of the evening, it was clear that something special had happened. The bikers felt inspired, not just because they met someone famous, but because they saw real kindness and forgiveness. Keanu's way of handling the situation without anger, without showing off, taught them an important lesson about respect and second chances. When Keanu stood up to leave, the whole group stood with him. They shook his hand, some even hugged him, and promised to remember his words. The leader looked him in the eye and said, "Thank you for giving us your time. We'll never forget this." Keanu smiled, wished them safe travels, and walked back to his table. The bikers watched him go, feeling proud to have met someone so genuine. The evening that had started with jokes and teasing ended with laughter, friendship, and a lesson they would carry for the rest of their lives. The night at the diner felt different now. There was a calm happiness in the air, as if everyone could feel that something special had just happened. The bikers, who were usually the ones making all the noise, were now quieter and more thoughtful. They kept looking at Keanu, amazed by how friendly and down-to-earth he was. The waitress, who had worried earlier, now smiled as she worked. Seeing everyone get along so well, Keanu sat with the group a little longer, enjoying the simple company. He asked the bikers about their lives and listened as they shared more. Stories, some happy, some tough, and some just plain funny. One biker talked about losing his job last year and how riding with friends helped him forget his worries for a while. Another told a story about fixing his bike with just some wire and tape on the side of the road, and how his friends teased him about it for weeks. The group laughed together, feeling closer now. Keanu understood their struggles. He told them that life is not always easy for anyone, no matter how famous they become. He shared that he had faced loss in his own life. He lost people he loved, and sometimes he felt very lonely. "We all have our hard days," Keanu said quietly. "But we also have the power to make things better for someone else, even in small ways." The bikers listened with respect. They were surprised by his honesty. One of them said, "It's strange. I thought people with your life had no problems, but you're just like us." Keanu nodded. "Fame doesn't protect you from pain. We're all human. What matters is that we look out for each other." The waitress came by again, filling everyone's cups and joining in for a minute. She thanked Keanu for being so kind, not just to her but to everyone in the diner. "Not many people would sit and talk with strangers the way you do," she said, her eyes shining. Keanu smiled and told her that everyone has a story worth hearing, and that kindness is free. Soon, the bikers started talking about what they learned that night. One of them said, "I guess we were wrong to judge you, or anyone, by how they look or act." Another added, "It's easy to forget that everyone is fighting their own battle." Keanu agreed. "A little patience and understanding can go a long way." The leader of the group looked at his friends and said, "Let's make a promise to treat people better from now on. We've learned our lesson." The others nodded. It was a simple promise, but it felt important. The way Keanu handled their teasing with calm, kindness, and even forgiveness had touched them deeply. They wanted to be better people, not just tonight, but always. Other people in the diner noticed the change too. The older couple smiled at the group, glad to see peace and understanding take over where there had been jokes and teasing before. The truck driver, who had watched everything from his seat at the counter, raised his coffee cup in a quiet toast to Keanu, who smiled back. Keanu looked around the diner, feeling grateful for the moment. He knew he would probably never see these people again, but he hoped the kindness they shared tonight would stay with them. Sometimes one good moment can grow into many more, changing the way people see the world and each other. Before long, it was time to go. The bikers paid for their meals, and Keanu thanked the waitress for her service, making sure to leave a generous tip. The bikers promised the waitress they'd come back again, but next time, with better manners. As they all stood to leave, Keanu looked at the group and said, "Take care of each other out there. Life's road is long, but it's better when you're kind along the way." The bikers shook his hand, some of them giving him a pat on the back. They knew they had met someone truly special that night. The group stepped outside into the cool evening air. Their bikes waited in a neat line, shining under the streetlights. Keanu stood by his own motorcycle for a moment, watching as the bikers put on their helmets and prepared to ride off. The leader turned to wave goodbye, and Keanu waved back with a gentle smile. As the bikes roared to life and disappeared down the road, everyone at the diner felt a little lighter, a little more hopeful. Keanu climbed onto his own bike, ready to continue his journey, but now with one more good memory to carry with him. The night was calm, and the street outside the diner glowed under yellow lights. The bikers had just ridden off, their engines fading into the distance, leaving behind a feeling of change that everyone could sense. Keanu stood quietly by his motorcycle, fastening his helmet and taking one last look at the small diner that had brought so many lives together for just a short while. Inside, the waitress cleaned the last few tables, her thoughts drifting back to the evening's events. She knew she would remember this night for a long time, not just because a famous person had visited, but because of the way kindness and understanding had filled the room. Even the people who had not spoken much, like the truck driver or the old couple, left with smiles, feeling lucky to have witnessed something special. Keanu checked his pockets, making sure he had everything before heading out. Then, quietly, without anyone noticing, he paid for everyone's meals in the diner. The waitress found out only after he had left. She stood at the counter, amazed by his generosity, and couldn't wait to share the story with others. This simple act made her believe even more that kindness can come from anyone, and that small things can change a person's whole day. As Keanu started his bike, he noticed the leader of the bikers standing across the street, alone, as if waiting for a sign. The two men nodded to each other. The biker raised his hand, not saying a word, but his eyes spoke of deep respect and thanks. Keanu smiled back, then slowly drove off into the night. The ride was peaceful. The wind on his face and the steady sound of the engine helped him think. Keanu felt happy, not because he had been recognized, but because he had been able to share a real moment with strangers. The lesson was simple. Everyone has a story, and sometimes all it takes to change someone's day is a little patience and an open heart. As he rode away from the town, Keanu remembered the biker's promise to treat people better from now on. He hoped they would keep that promise, not just because they met him, but because they saw what kindness could do. He also hoped the waitress would tell others about what happened, so that maybe more people would act with understanding and respect. Back at the diner, the story of the night began to spread. The waitress told the cook, who told his family, and soon the whole town knew about the quiet man on the motorcycle who taught a lesson in kindness. Even the bikers, when they met with other groups on the road, shared their story not to brag, but to show how a single moment can change your way of thinking. The leader of the bikers especially thought about what happened. He used to judge people by their looks and sometimes by how they acted, but now he felt different. Every time he saw a stranger sitting alone, he remembered Keanu's calm eyes and gentle words. He started to treat people with more respect, and slowly, others followed his example. The lesson from that evening didn't just stay in the diner. It grew and traveled, just like the people who were there. Each person who heard the story learned something from it. Some learned to look beyond someone's appearance. Others learned the value of a simple apology. And some learned that anyone, no matter how famous or unknown, can feel lonely and just wants a bit of kindness. Keanu continued his journey, stopping in different towns, meeting new faces, and sharing more quiet moments. But the night at the diner stayed with him. He often thought about how small things could become big in people's lives, how one friendly conversation or a small act of forgiveness could change the way people see the world. As time went on, the story of that night became a favorite in the town. People who had been in the diner told it to their children and grandchildren. The waitress kept a picture of a motorcycle in her notebook, a small reminder of a night when everything changed. Keanu's lesson was simple, but powerful. You never know what someone is going through, and you never know how much your kindness might mean to a stranger. The world could always use a little more understanding, and everyone, in their own way, could be the reason someone leaves a place feeling better than when they arrived. And so, the quiet man on the motorcycle rode on, leaving behind more than just memories. He left a lesson that would last for years to come.